More hubs that provoke. Part 3. These are my views on some of the issues that are always current in our society. They may not be fully and unquestionably right, nor will they be a farce, and completely devoid of merit. Author Roy T. James. Chapter 6. How to make human society peaceful. If all that is wrong with us is in the misplaced or untimely choice of our responses, how can it be corrected? Well, let every form of response flourish. The one most suitable will naturally survive. Today, we understand that infectious diseases like flu, chickenpox and pneumonia are caused by microscopic organisms, bacteria and viruses. This, the germ theory of diseases, in fact opened our eyes. With this knowledge, we have developed ways to treat and prevent infections, or diseases spreading unspeakable tragedy. The issue, in a similar manner, won't a new and different approach to mental health empower us in facing issues of harmony in society? I think, yes, it will. In fact, all our issues in the behavioral plane can be grouped as misplaced or unsuitable responses, whether as actions, reactions, or other expressions, all of which would have been the desired choice elsewhere. And in instances where the response fit, its intensity would be making it a misfit. A society without peace is the direct result of this lack of harmony. To me, while seeking the origin of such an incongruity, one thing is becoming clear. Our adherence to a particular set of responses, which we term as the appropriate ones, does have the potential to make any natural response unacceptable. And it is a huge canvas, limited only by the current ambience, or we involuntarily suppress much of our natural reactions, at least some of which could have been the best suited ones at the instant, or our reluctance to accept any other kind of response even when suggested so with all sincerity, could be the one making our position untenable to others. And the cascading effect of the original response followed by such unsustainable actions and reactions by various entities that come across this, results in instances of unrest, that too, for no specific grounds. Actually, this is why we find it difficult to contain unrest. There is no real reason for it. Once the unrest sets in, the original, incongruent response of some random entity that would have caused it gets submerged in a sea of reactions. Each such reaction assuming a degree of depth, urgency, or other parameters depending on the instantaneous feeling of intensity or abhorrence felt by the reacting entity. The responses tend to assume a form that will be unrecognizable from the original action of incongruence. Also, the response can occupy a wide canvas, depending solely on things like creativity, imagination, or aesthetic sensibility of the respondent. As a result, anybody trying to find an answer to the instances of current unrest will never have the luxury of having an inkling about the incongruent actions, the original cause. In addition, each such response, from different entities, being wholly dependent on the dramatic capabilities or exhibitor leanings of the respondent, those who prod further will find it difficult to see beyond its bedazzlement. This is the reason, I think, in all instances of disharmony, the fundamental cause is never found. In fact, due to the same reason, much of the writings on such topics are mostly abstract, philosophical, and perhaps scholarly dissertations. The cause. But the fact is, when our conditioned response start producing such established, dazzling reactions, it becomes an issue. That being true for the natural responses from each of us, turning anything into an issue is dependent only on current or local sensibilities or both. For example, see the religious sphere, rather than the hate content of an event. What really would spark an issue is the current, local reaction to certain happening. You see, an event does not maintain its hateful nature, except in a social group, which, for certain reasons, would have painted it so. Rather, that particular group is a conditioned one. Or, we can say that conditioned behavior is acting like a germ. Just as germs are spreading diseases without our knowledge, or dazzling, conditioned responses are also spreading issues of mental health with no intervention from our side. I agree. Presently we do not see this as issues of mental health, but we better. Thus, whatever social issues are there in our midst could be happening as a result of some of our conditioned responses, either in the form of impediments we impose on our conduct, or unbridled celebrations, or both, either by us, ourselves, or by others. What are we doing now? I agree we are always aware of the incendiary nature of our society, the most common places to observe sparks of a destructive nature being language, religion or ethnicity. But events do not elicit an appropriate reaction, since, whenever we observe a violent reaction, say in matters concerning religion, rather than looking for the source of violence, we direct our efforts to the particular aspects of religions that took part in it, and we may issue corrective or punitive actions to contain those aspects. This goes on, as it had been since the dawn of history. Whenever the disturbance becomes too much to handle, we resort to some kind of urgent, symptomatic cure that can make some difference, and forget about such issues till the next time it erupts. Such a lackadaisical approach to an issue that is crucial to our well-being needs to be investigated further. Contrast this with the material world. Here, I think we approach even less significant issues with an open, alert mind, and keep looking for answers. And answers come, making our life more and more comfortable. But, when it comes to the spiritual world, we are very clear about two things. 1. We are unwilling to question spiritual matters. 2. We are quite vehement in our objections to others doing so. Whereas the opposite is true for the material world. Not only that we are quite happy to question any matter relating to the physical world, but also we are eager to help others doing so. Why so? Are we afraid that we may stumble upon some answer? My answer: what do we need to do? I think we need to be more inclusive, while teaching ourselves about correct responses. In a given situation, rather than assessing a few of the responses as correct, and some other ones as wrong, we need to mold ourselves to appreciate all responses as valid, a few of those perhaps more appropriate at the given instant than the others. For example, we already know there are many dimensions to each issue. Some of those, I myself have tried to portray through my hubs. What stops us from reevaluating all our priorities and responses in the light of those? Perhaps that can result in a complete shift to our system of education, which will usher in a society with a different set of ambitions, desires, etc., that are more conducive to peace and harmony. But it is nothing new. In fact, we already know this. We apply this philosophy in our appreciation of the material world. For example, we know different elements, compounds, and other stuff need to go into the constitution of things to meet the desired requirements. And we never rest, taking one line of analysis, even if it led us to the desired result. We know that every constituent is there to meet some need, or cause something undesirable, or both. But when it comes to the societal plane, we have molded ourselves to think of all responses other than a few chosen ones, unnecessary, or dangerous. And by constantly suppressing some of our responses, we are encouraging unknowingly instances of unrest. Therefore, we need to permit a wide variety of responses from all, leading to spontaneous evolution of priorities. And the actions for it should begin at home. Don't be adhered inflexibly to whatever one is attached to. Remember also, a flexible adhesion makes a stronger joint, one that can withstand more forces of disruption. The ultimate answer, that completes all that is needed to put an end to instances of unrest, which is only this: let each and every reaction bloom. Selective breeding of ideas, the favourite pastime of the world since long, is still possible, but at a much slower pace, one not discernible easily. Chapter 7. Isn't there room for a new lifestyle? I have written many articles, each of which featuring a new or varied look at some part of human nature. I think most of it veers around one idea: how incorrect or misplaced we are when we continue to react, appreciate, or sense, as we currently do. A few of the questions that were examined illustrate this, like, how harmful is unity, why the current pattern of education is fit for a change, etc. And it is not difficult to come to this conclusion. Whatever is common to all these issues is the one that deserves to be attacked first. If we are to proceed with the re-examination of all that we currently consider as wrong, unsuitable, or inappropriate, the very first entity that pops up is our current lifestyle. I think there should be no doubts about this, since it is a prime common factor, which in fact engulfs everything else. Our current lifestyle is one of permanent settlement, and the earlier one can be considered to be a fully nomadic one. When we compare both, one thing stands out. In a settled lifestyle, everything good or bad in a society gets distributed in a rather narrow centralized way, limited both in time and space, whereas in a nomadic one, all this happens in a broad, decentralized manner, spreading fast in all dimensions. As a result, in the former case, people get fed up of good things fast, since they are virtually confined to the same spot, where they are repeatedly exposed to the same ambience. And when we look at the bad things, the torment continues with no respite. In spite of all this, people continue to revel in their fortunes, since they hardly get a chance to learn of any other way of life. But in the latter case, exact opposite happens. Here, the good gets distributed, making more people happy. When the bad follow suit, inconveniences smooth out due to spreading. Also, at any time, they shall remain better informed about whatever possibilities that may occur about enhancing their means, outlook, and happiness, always being in touch with a wider cross-section of the world. Undoubtedly, the nomadic approach is the better one. But we chose to be otherwise, and are continuing to remain to be so. Perhaps farming did the trick. The agrarian community of that era couldn't have afforded to be always on the move. We hence follow a lifestyle of settlements and communities, even though the good dies here fast and the bad lasts longer. But, since the original compulsions of the agrarian society are no more applicable to us, we can very well do a rethink. Now, if we are to utilize the benefits of the progress we made so far in the areas of science and technology, we can make a suitable mix of these two lifestyles. This can let us enjoy the benefits of both, while avoiding the many disadvantages each have. Chapter 8. Life or Lifestyle, which is evolving, and how human lifestyle is constantly evolving, and all the disquiet that is seen in our societies is a direct result of this. What is necessary is to have a theory of evolution in this regard, which can guide the populace to arriving at the correct priorities in life. There is no sign to show that we're evolving, but there are far too many signs that show human lifestyle, or the set of priorities that constitute it, evolving constantly. Why didn't we think of a theory in connection with this, which could have helped in the adaptation of the appropriate lifestyle for humans, without leaving the human society in perpetual turmoil, as it is now? I think there was room waiting for a theory in this regard, and I also think it happened to get filled by the very first theory that came up, since it turned out to be a brilliant one, though not the right one, and its brilliance effectively stopped further research. Let fact speak for itself. There was neither a sign that necessitated man to evolve, particularly in physical appearance, nor was there another one that showed partially evolved ones. But there were enough signs which showed everyone nurturing a constantly evolving set of priorities that greatly influenced the way the life progress, for one and all. We call it by the noun lifestyle, which is nothing but the aggregate of such a set of preferences. So, though in reality, more than humans, human lifestyle is the one which is evolving, and since we noticed the former, differences in appearance took better of us, prompting one to come up with a theory. I think it happened thus because of this difficulty. Far too many aspects related to our lifestyle show signs of gradual change. That can lead to many variables involved in the examination, and can make the study on the mechanism of its evolution an impossible one. As a result, human lifestyle has become a complex stuff, and is progressing, perhaps in a haphazard manner, without any worthwhile contribution from us, whereas it is our input that makes our life pleasant everywhere else. We take pride in the fact that our life is complex, as well as belittling other forms for having a life of simplicity and ease. Also, we are always ready to make any alterations to whatever is our way of doing things currently, just to make our life more pleasant, or to let it progress in the same manner. That is, we agree to make any changes anywhere, just to enable us to continue with our current lifestyle. Why is that? In spite of the admirable progress we make in all spheres of life, like technology and medicine, human life does not flow smoothly. In fact, here we are lucky. Human life can be simplified as a complex set of preferences, and there is a single point which controls all such preferences, whether it is about social life, professional one, or whatever. It is nothing else but one's God, and it makes our task a really straightforward one. More than whether man is a product of evolution or not, or rather than investigating into the vast flurry of unpredictable priorities that form our lifestyle, we could spend all our efforts in only one direction, debating about the evolution of God. Though there are far too many signs indicating to the evolution of God, we dismiss all such signs with a stock response. Whenever the ancients made a reference to animals, natural wonders, or some other sign as God, they really were having whatever is our current idea in their mind. In fact, God is a unique idea, which, while dictating and controlling all that we think or do, splendidly supports itself. One can see it evolving every day. When our current idea about God shapes itself to keep in pace with new developments, especially in science, while simultaneously and silently altering our appreciation of all things. All this happens on the quiet. The moment a theory or observation that is likely to cast a shadow on the existing idea of God becomes rather indisputable, the very idea of God turns a little in the abstract, just enough to circumvent or nullify the effects of such a theory. While discussing the evolution of religious belief, I found one book mentioning something very important. When thoughts like that of God originated in the early humans, the idea of God would have been one as real as the mountains, waterfalls, forests, thunder, lightning, or eclipses, which all were thought to be the homes from where gods came. The idea of God was something quite similar to whatever idea they possessed about such magnificent sights. As time went by, they learned more about all these wonders. That these are, more than wonders, real, consisting of different substances, having certain composition, and identifiable functions, all of which alterable to a great extent, by their effort, and they would have learned to tame some of these for better living. But, all these while, the idea of God remained intact. How did this come to be? To make this a possibility, we constantly attribute style, power, and a fertile imagination to the ancient ones. We attribute them with ignorance, everywhere else. Some of them think in a particular manner and unearth the secrets of nature, while some others think in a manner exactly opposite to it, to keep the idea of God safeguarded from any change. It seems all those who thought, deliberated, or wrote about this are in total agreement here. What can explain the above? What makes us exhibit such a context-sensitive intellect? As far as real things go, the ancients must have felt encouragement from all quarters, and the pursuit of the secrets of nature naturally followed. But we know, for imagination to flourish there should be something, like the society, to appreciate and support it. A king, like in earlier times, or a government, or other organizations that offers encouragement. One can see the prevalence of great poetry or impressive sculptures indicate as much to the supportive nature of the society as to the creative talents of the era. In this light, our assumption about the ancients having an expressive, fanciful, and fertile mind seems to be too much. Ancient world could not have been one where talents of imagination flourished. You see, the very activity of staying alive would have involved protecting themselves from the dangers posed by the weather and the wilderness, and a lion's share of human effort would have been spent here, leaving hardly any time for reflections, debate, or discussions over and above the routine tasks involved in progressing one's life, rather than ascribing motives of supplication, exploration, or experiment. I think we should see the remnants of the distant past, more than as products of imagination, as a record of observations or their reaction to all that was impressive. Look, all animals are capable of doing something no man can do. This is all the more striking if we think of the days before the appearance of implements or weapons of various nature. Imagine of the discomfort an unfriendly animal would have caused, and the help or benefit a friendly one could have been of. It is only normal that such beings become a revered lot. Remember, for each and every activity that man cannot do, there is some other being from the kingdom of animals who excels in it. Man was comfortable with his limited superiority. Time went on, changing our perception about things, and altering greatly the capabilities of man. We reached a position where there is already explanations regarding almost all things. That creates a vacuum, since there is nothing to submit to. We hence started to imagine of some entity, and present ourselves to it. Here one needs to admit, our fertile mind came up with admirable acuity, and provided a simple, but effective answer. Think of all those we used to submit to, as to rather separate entities, one we can see as well as sense, and another we can only feel, which will be giving rise to a plethora of objects, both real and imaginary, all of it fitting into three heads, namely, religion, science, and those not belonging to either. Religion happens to get accumulated with things we can see and feel, as long as one can do it successfully. Then science comes and takes over a few things, starting with areas where religion clearly falters. Things that can belong to either heads also got into groups, like the many facets of arts, and those belonging to neither religion nor science. These can come to great use, where none else fit. Science is progressively displacing religion and God. I think the final gasps of life is coming out from both religion and God, painting an ambience of violence everywhere. A discernible replacement for God and religion is evolving, bringing this to an end, even if none of us recognize this. It can happen much earlier, if we pay heed to these thoughts. And we shall then follow the true lifestyle, which we should have been following, from the days of Big Bang itself. We wouldn't have been facing this situation had the theory of evolution addressed the spiritual sphere of life instead of the biological one. Since Darwin took an easy path and examined the living forms physically, similarities could be seen among different species of life. Had he chosen to examine the less obvious features of life, origin of deities would have been the outcome, and perhaps an insight into how our priorities change, which could have thrown more light on the spiritual dimension of life, and how to bring it in tune with the current priorities at all times. Not to mention of the good that would have happened by now, had human efforts been directed away from wars and strife. Chapter 9. What is not right with us? I think Shakespeare should have added after frailty, thy name is woman, inconsistency, thy name is man. For, in this particular aspect of one's character, and perhaps only in it, one can say, both man and woman surpass each other. And it is the only shortfall that is readily seen in both men and women, they more or less complementing each other. Everywhere else, in many ways, this form of life is the best of life. In many other ways, it isn't so. At any instant, there are losers, and at least a few gainers. When things go right, we feel happy for the gainers, and reaffirm our intent to emulate them. But when things go wrong, we find inadequacy in their efforts, or keep fleeing their choice of an unsuitable path. By making them think that they too should have been gainers, effectively, we all implore them to do better. And we have been continuing with such an approach to life, since time immemorial. Strangely, we also seem to have accepted that it is okay for things to go wrong, as far as humans go, though nothing goes wrong when it comes to other forms of life. Why is it so? I think we are yet to get something right. I also think, given our penchant for finding answers to tough questions, and when the only issue is to figure out the reasons for such an ambience of unpredictability in everything concerning human race, why is that we are yet to make a start? And, as the human race advances in leaps and bounds, new findings keep on appearing. But, almost all of those explain why a self-learning system, like a human, is likely to be prone to errors, though is a superior or an advanced one. Isn't this making further efforts of resolution unnecessary, say, by making a virtue out of a shortfall? Or, is it so? Well, human society always is, unlike that of all the other forms of life, a bunch of contradictions. Take the prevailing ideas about our nature itself, to start with. We have meekly accepted an error-prone nature for ourselves. Couldn't we have imagined of a different ambience, where our nature will be error-free, like that all the other species of life on Earth? Or, take our actions. On the whole, the most admired actions are those that lead to destruction of the current social order, or the way we progress our life. Think of a few great names chosen at random and one can easily confirm it as a fact. Like Hannibal, Napoleon, Karl Marx, Abraham Lincoln, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, Buddha, or Muhammad Nabi. If that's so, are humans always looking for fresh living conditions, a new lifestyle, and are in a constant search for it? I think yes. What else is the reason for the instant acceptance enjoyed by almost all who come up with a somewhat imaginative idea in this regard? Also, what other cause could be there to render even a widely celebrated such idea to dust, for no apparent reason? This The rather restless nature of humans is a favourite topic of great men, and all schools of philosophy owes its presence, as well as the high pedestal it gets placed, to nothing else but this. And I think, had they looked at unrest, not as a fairly philosophic issue common to mankind as a whole, but as individual expressions of unease, a remedy could have evolved by now. And if we look closely, not even one member of this species is like any other member, as far as the style of living, one's priorities in life, and the character go, though they are all the same, as far as the material and physical consistency go. And it is quite unlike all other species of life, where, even one physical appearance and texture differ, which is not at all uncommon, remarkable unity is displayed, both of character and living style. Here I think, the words race, species etc. should have an altogether different meaning when referred to humans. Since long everyone has been accepting the collection of human lifestyles as just the same as the way of life of all other forms of life, modified suitably for humans. And the argument goes, human essentially is an altruistic animal who has to conclude first, unlike all other species, what one is to do, learn how to do it, and then do it. Thereafter, the reaction or results faced at each instant shall have the power to alter in a proportionate manner any of these, unless of course, one decides against it. And over the years, a lifestyle seems to have evolved, which is well suited for such a kind of life, which, though happens to be vastly different from that of all the others, is very much a natural style for humans. Room for a rethink. Is it so? I think there is room for a rethink. One question comes to me instantly. Are we living the way a race should be? That is, are we using all our abilities to the optimum? And if we are, would the living style of human race turn out to be an issue for humans itself, not to speak of all other forms of life, and everything else, everywhere? Aren't humans living in a manner that is just a copy of life followed by all the other ones? You see, one can put all forms of life into two groups. Those who survive on naturally occurring resources like plants, and those who survive on those ones. Except man, none contributes in any way to the irreversible changes that happen constantly. Even in case of global warming caused by animals, it is the population of farm animals that is contributing to it. Clearly, that is something of man's interest. Though as much a part of nature as any other one, man is a threat to nature. Why? If man is just another inhabitant of this planet, why should one follow a path that is dangerous, not only to self, but also to the planet itself? I therefore think there is an urgent need to examine and revalidate the lifestyle we have come to adopt. Do we have a consistent lifestyle? One can't but notice this. All the other species follow somewhat the same style of living wherever they are, though their physical constitution may differ to suit the prevailing environmental parameters. Man follows many different styles of living, all chosen according to one's liking, a totally random parameter, even when there is no change in environment. And, the physical constitution remaining the same, man is forced to devise ways of making the environment a suitable one. In short, rather than having a lifestyle, man excels in moulding one's life to suit the style one chooses to adopt. So, let us assume, when it comes to lifestyle, each one chooses the one that suits one's priorities the most. Or, does it happen that way? Let us check. Assuming that we belong to this planet, let me examine how befitting is the way humans conduct themselves, especially in relation to the affairs of life and living. The questions to be asked are we following the correct, best-suited path? Is there a better way? If yes, what could be the new approach to life? And, if we aren't living the appropriate way, why is it so? I think the above questions should have been among of the first ones to be faced by mankind, had we ever questioned the manner of living we humans have adopted. We need to learn to do even basic activities like walking and talking, followed by a long list that includes everything from sleeping to procreation. When that is so, why is it that a unique lifestyle was not adopted by our ancestors? Why didn't it become a part of growing up? Let me address the question regarding a consistent lifestyle. I think, currently and for the past many years, we have been living as separate families that constitute societies, further differentiated on many other parameters like religion, caste, and colour. These get organized into countries and beyond. Constantly, interactions take place within each country, between societies, within each society that exists as part of every country, and also within and between families that constitute all of this. Some of such exchanges could be beneficial, and some harmful. However, the ultimate effect of all these is to keep the societies always on the boil. And all is not well with the society, we instantly recognize. But, as there are always quite a few who are ready with a countermeasure, some of it looking appropriate to whatever be the original cause, the race as a whole ignores this. In fact, in most cases, the cure disturbs the society more than it pacifies, since the actual cause is never identified, being a part of the very cure. In addition, each of these societies could span more than one country, widening the extent and scope of conflicts. And for managing all this, we presently have a large establishment of international and other organizations. Is this the ideal way to live, especially when it is clear as daylight? The large-scale interactions in the society, much of it for no reason, is the one that sows the seeds of conflict. Not that we are not aware of this. Improving communication skills has been a pet topic always, which in fact does nothing more than replacing one such seed by another. Though this may eliminate the current conflict, it could lead to many new ones. Ideal way to live, but, as mentioned earlier, the fact that our forefathers failed to institute a unique lifestyle casts a doubt about the currently accepted lifestyle, which is nothing but a pattern of life well suited for one particular way of living, namely, as a society, the idea of which the early ones might have gathered easily by sheer observation of the living style adopted by every other form of life. I therefore go one step further. We are forcing ourselves to live in a manner similar to that of all the other inhabitants of this planet. I agree, for many centuries we have been living thus, since it so happened that for whatever reason, we found it profitable. But there is one question we need to ask ourselves. Is this the appropriate way? Is there a need at all for a lifestyle, as far as humans go? Are we future ready? To help us in coming to a conclusion, let us look at life as a whole. Earth can be thought of as the primary market for life, which also is the main product of all players of this market, say, cow corporation, dog corporation, parrot corporation, and so on, where the market leader currently is human corporation. The ideal lifestyle should have been, while catering to the present needs and comforts, making due allocation for preparing oneself and one's progenies to the perceived threats and changes both of the immediate and the long-term future. Are we doing so? I think no. We are merely relaxing the big gap between the human's perception of life and that of all others, effectively make us blind to any threat, both of the present and of the future. I think this is nothing new. Presently, we realize this, but much later in life, and some of us constantly come up with remedies that makes life uncomfortable, especially for the ones who have much life ahead for them. As a result, all those who like to think deeply on such topics will feel highly discouraged, leading to more suggestions or cures that are impractical or not progressive enough. Had it not been so, we all would have been following a perfectly fitting lifestyle that leaves no room for disharmony, just like all other forms of life. What about other forms of life? Are they doing so? I think yes. Though I cannot describe the process, but the results we constantly observe in nature, like the appearance of new breeds with added immunity, specifically against whatever might have caused the extermination of its previous generations, could point to nothing else. Why so? In the present style of living, a good portion of our effort needs to be directed to assuaging and settling the disturbances, the inherent incompatibilities existing in the society would have caused. Discordance of such a scale would not have been there, had society been a natural part of human life. And it represents a lion's share of destructive efforts we humans entertain, namely, wars, pestilence, and diseases. And also, we continue with our attitude of demeaning constantly the living style of all other forms of life. Now that we have more or less concluded that we aren't living the appropriate way, let us try to find out what is preventing us, and why we are yet to realize it. Human society, the culprit. Re-examine the very idea of human society. Each member of the human species is vastly different from every other member of this species. having distinct physical and mental makeup with one's own priorities and approach. What is good for one need not be acceptable to every other person, and it is this facet of life we celebrate as uniqueness or individuality. Now let us see what could have happened if there was no society, at least in its present form. How changed would have been the life the humans lead. Take the best case of a society. If there are 10 individuals, and even if they are of similar nature, there would have been 11 opinions, one each for all 10, and one where all are in agreement. Now take the worst case. If all of them happen to be of entirely different nature, well, there would not have been a limit to the differing opinions that can prevail at any moment. One each for each individual, and so also for the many groups that would have been springing up. New groups would have been forming, consisting of any 2 individuals, any 3, and so on, with each group being of individuals sharing a common opinion. And as many new groups would have been in place as all the permutations possible, both within each group and beyond groups. The more the groups or subgroups, the more numerous the occasions of skirmish, since group loyalty is an easy but potent spark. In future, no society, but the above situation changes if there is no society, at least in its present form. Obviously so, since there are no groups in the absence of a society, for the above scenario of groups and subgroups, and for all the other combinations, clearly, such frequent instances of skirmish would not have been occurring, and the result, human race would not have been facing any troubles except for random occurrences of dispute, or clash of personal preferences. And in such a case, even if installed, a government is needed only to act as a troubleshooter. It can continue to be in slumber, except for organizing and conducting a smooth flow of life, while on the lookout for future threats and keeping the race prepared to meet those. And, since each and every member of the race get an opportunity to express themselves fully, dissatisfaction or resentment shall become things of the past. Also, when all the diversified talents that are hidden in every single society bloom, golden, the days shall become the unanswered questions. Let me list a few reasons, indicating why we are not able to do all these life-saving measures, as far as human race go. Or, let us see what is preventing us. I think a few significant questions in this regard will give the answer. Why are humans so unlike every other form of life on Earth? Where do we belong to? Do we appear to be a natural constituent of Earth? What can explain the contradictions which no other species show? Do humans belong to some other planet that has a more conducive ambience, like a better suited G, as some scientists suggest? This question takes prominence now, thanks to the impending danger to Earth, both from global warming and from the irreversible depletion in natural resources. Since the primary culprit in these cases is nothing but human action, shouldn't we wonder why, unlike all other living constituents of this planet, humans cause grave damages to their living environment by their natural way of life? And if so, would it be an error if someone doubts, even if there is no other reason to support such a query, whether humans are meant to be living in this planet or not? The last question can explain an inconvenient fact we constantly overlook. Every form of life has its own nature and character, and follows a life that is consistent with it. Whereas, if at all we succeed in specifying a nature or character for human race, we will also find them leading a life that is totally at variance with it. How could it happen so? If we assume that human is as much a natural creation as any other living being on Earth, it is not easy to attribute such a disparity to a specific, localized reason, like environmental changes, unless we come up with something that affects humans radically, while bypassing successfully all other forms of life. Or, we need to look elsewhere. But if we make assumptions to the contrary, that human is not a natural constituent like others, almost all the contradictions we have observed in the course of our discussion becomes non-existent. All the behavioral particularities of humans shall then become valuable questions for further study, the results of which can show us the correct origins of the race. I think one such possibility is this. We could be having our origins in a comet-like object. Some of earliest forefathers might have happened to get dropped here during one of its visits. Further adaptation occurred over many years, during which they acquired the shape, size and other traits necessary for survival on this planet, progressively losing some or all of their original characteristics or features. Also, the possibility of intermingling between at least one of the many forms of life here and the visitors cannot be ruled out. Either, by the time the comet made another visit, they or descendants were not able to recognize each other, or another visit is yet to take place. In fact, all the observations and deductions of human evolution fit here perfectly well, which can also explain easily the existence of intermediate forms for a human, like Neanderthal, and the absence of any such for all the other forms of life. Lastly, assuming that human is as much a natural creation as any other, irrespective of the origin, let me see what can explain the peculiarities or differences discussed above. In the beginning of this paper, a few questions were asked. Are we following the correct, best-suited path? Is there a better way? Such questions hide the real reason for human society to be highly turbulent. We all know, in connection with physical systems, instruments, or machines, from the simple to the most complex, that all of those has an operating range, which affects every parameter of interest. And for each of those, one can rely on the measured or indicated value only when the system is operating within this range, beyond which, whether above or below, the behavior of the particular machine or system will be erratic. For example, if a spring balance has a measuring range from 10 kg to 100 kg, and if it is used for measuring a load more than 100 kg, or less than 10 kg, the indicated weight will not be the actual one. Taking a cue from here, one can say, it does not matter much what exactly is the path one follows. There should be no turbulence as long as one remains within the equivalent of the operating range, whatever be the path one would have chosen. It should not matter much whether the path is one of love or violence, or of material benefits or spiritual goals. But turbulence shall undoubtedly prevail if one happens to disregard such a range, whatever be the path. And that is what is not right with humans. The path they follow is right, but the way they follow the path is wrong. They always remain beyond the linear range, whatever be the parameter in consideration, giving rise to disproportionate reaction to input. We may not admit to it easily, but the fact is that one's responses are always colored by the mental state one is in. Hence, even when there are no disturbances, both external and internal, it is extremely difficult for one to produce an unbiased response. That is why one has to make oneself free of every form of discomfort, as well as states of extreme delight, if one's decisions are to be undoubtedly worthy, and if the reaction is agreeable to us, we celebrate the disproportion, and if it is not so, we tend to accommodate it. In both the cases, the disproportion is accepted as a unique facet of human nature. As a result, each and every one feels greatly encouraged to react always excessively and in a manner that is grossly out of proportion. And it leads to a vicious circle, and quite amusingly, rather than realizing it as such, we celebrate the same also as a unique part of the human. To correct this, we only need to take a few simple steps. Rather, only one step. Make moderation a steady and permanent part of life, a constant feature of one's approach to whatever one may be busy with. And in this regard, a practical way is to establish the equivalent of operating range, or safe limit, for whatever activity one may choose to be with, and then adhere to it. To let that happen, we need to shun all types of deviations that are substantially away from the average, whether toward the better or the poorer, the higher or the lower, or of comfort or of discomfort, in whatever facet of life we may currently dwell in. A quick and easy way for all this, I think, is to abolish from our languages all comparatives, superlatives, and other words of similar vein. I am wondering, how would have such words become so dear to us? What do such words do? These words make it possible to prolong whatever association or engagement one may happen to be having with other objects or events, an essential element of life, which I discuss in my book, The Unsure Male. Like, if one can relish a cooked item, one can relish it for longer time or have repeated helpings, if the item is, say, cooked better. Or, one may enjoy a sweet song, but one can do it more often when the song is a sweeter one.